How did you feel about them when they were in that interview? Did you feel comfortable talking to them? Is this somebody that you would want to spend some time with, not just at work, but maybe outside of work too? Because, the reality is we spend so much of our times at our workplace that you spend almost the same amount of time as your coworkers than as you do with your family. So it's really got to be somebody that fits there too.
Successful leaders make building healthy culture a priority. Meet other leaders who are building a culture where people want to stay and know how to win together.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me today Troy Luster. Troy has a wonderful history with Fil A, and then a long stint with Whattaburger, and currently he's with Wingstop in the training development department there, directing that, and over 155 locations. So Troy, it's so great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Glad to be on.
Troy, it's so good to have you on the show. I met you through Gerald Huggins, one of our mutual friends. He's a Fil A owner-operator in College Station, Texas, and I believe you'd worked with him for a little while, but we met during your Whattaburger days. So yeah, tell me a little bit about what it's like to work with Gerald Huggins.
Yeah, Gerald's great. I worked with him while I was going through school, so I am an Aggie. Whoop.
Oh, all right.
He started me off as a team member just in his Aggieland location, and throughout the years, I had the opportunity to work and grow with his team to the point where I got to oversee the kitchen operations for both of his restaurants that he had at the time, and then moving on from there, ended up running one of the South College Station store by myself for a little bit there as the director of operations, and then took a role where I was overseeing a little bit of both the restaurants too. So a lot of fun. Love Gerald. Still talk to him today too. So great guy.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Well, shout out to Gerald and for finding a great leader. And then you were able to, you transitioned to another beloved brand in Texas called Whattaburger. Some of our listeners may not know about that brand. It's a hamburger company here based in San Antonio, and spent quite a while there with them. Tell me a little bit about the Whattaburger tenure and maybe something that you learned there, but then then let's move into the transition to Wingstop.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll back up just a little bit more. So shortly after my time with Gerald, I actually transitioned to the leadership development program with Fil A Inc. and got to travel and do a lot of openings and run some corporately owned restaurants with them. After doing that, that's when I had switched over to Whattaburger, and my role with them was really to see how new restaurants were doing and making sure that we were performing well once we did that. As we kind of were looking at things, looking at some analytics and realizing, we could be a little bit better and a little bit more consistent in how we open those, we were able to put together a team that's what we focused on. We focused on training and opening new restaurants, and it was a lot of fun. I was with Whattaburger for about 7 years. And then unfortunately in March of 23, my team and I were laid off as part of some of the reorg. But it's led me to where I'm at now, which is with San Antonio Wings. It's a franchisee of Wingstop, where, like you said, we have about 155 locations. And now I have the opportunity to oversee the training and development for about 4,000 of our team members and all of our above store leaders as well.
My goodness, no small job. So
Right.
That's incredible. So yeah, tell me, so is it like, there's several curiosities I have in this. One, there were probably, it helped, of course, having that tenure with Gerald, but also I could see how LDP, and that's the leadership development program of Fil A, where you're actually going around doing grand openings or maybe helping with an interim management role. I could see how that could really roll well into that time with Whattaburger of establishing restaurants well. What were some principles that you were able to carry into Whattaburger that you had learned?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a huge help to have gone through that and be the boots on the ground for those restaurants. So as I had kind of jumped into Whattaburger, there was a couple of things that I had started putting together while I was with LDP. And there's 3 essentially filters that I use as I'm making business decisions and as I'm moving forward, still filters that I use today. And a lot of them are still a little bit Fil A specific from back then. But the first one is just a business leader mindset. And so that means different things to different people. But to me, when I'm thinking of that, I'm thinking of, okay, well, what is that 30,000 foot view? I know we talk about that a lot, but what is that view where how it's going to impact the business in either a positive or a negative way? So a lot of times that means, are we taking into account how that's going to impact the profitability of the restaurant or the business? How is that going to impact the owner? How is that going to impact the people that are working for you as well? So that's that first piece, is really thinking about the business as a whole and making sure that we're taking that into account. The second filter that I use is entrepreneurial spirit. That's one taken straight from the Chick-fil-A playbook. And really what I take from that is the desire and the want to grow and to be creative in how we grow, and really take some ownership in that growth without breaking out of the box. I know sometimes they say thinking outside the box. That entrepreneurial spirit to me is you're bending the sides of the box. You're getting creative, you're moving it a little bit, you're wanting to make sure that you're growing in the best way that you can for your business, but you're not necessarily breaking through the box and doing some things that maybe you shouldn't be. Uh, and then that third filter that I use that I think really ties everything together is the serve model. So those of you guys that have been with Chick-fil-A for a while will remember this, but see and shape the future, engage and develop others, reinvent continuously, value results in relationships, and then embody the values. And the beautiful thing that I love about the serve model is that it kind of ties that all together in a nice little package. So if you've thought about things as a leader and how it's going to impact the business, you've thought about it from how can I continue to grow as an entrepreneur, you are able to put it into that serve model and see, are you hitting all of these things? And by the time you get there, you probably are. So that's something that the serve model was something that I learned in Chick-fil-A a long, long time ago. And it's something that's really stuck with me the whole time. And that's something I've carried through with me even to today. Those are the three things that I have on my wall in my office to this day.
Love it. I love it. That's so incredible. And there's a lot to unpack there. So, by the way, we'll reference the Serve Model book written by Kim Blanchard and Mark Miller in the show notes. And it's such a great work. And just kind of parking there for a minute, that book is really largely centered on how to lead others. How do we lead others? Well, we got to cast that vision, figure out how to engage them, innovation, the values, and reinventing all that. So it's a good package. I'm glad. That's nice to see how you use that as your third kind of decision-making business filter. The entrepreneurial spirit, key phrase I love, figure out how to bend the edges of the boxes, because ultimately, I mean, here you are, you're working within three brands. We're talking about Chick-fil-A brand, Whattaburger brand, Wingstop brand. And I could see where entrepreneurial spirit could go a bit maverick, right? There's that chance for it to be like, well, let's start serving pizza, or let's, cook burgers at Wingstop, right? And so because it'll sell. And so, keeping the brand while yet within that box, igniting and showing entrepreneurial spirit. What's an example of something you've seen recently where entrepreneurial, or even the last few years, where entrepreneurial spirit has been a strategic benefit, even though it's still within that box?
Yes, I mean, honestly, I think a lot about what we're doing here at San Antonio Wings, and that's in how we're training our team. So the way that we train our team, we've got some things that we do just a bit differently. And that's because we've made decisions as a business and as a company that we feel are going to better serve our team. So one of the big things that we do is we have certifications for each position that are done as you're working, either to be what we call a flavor expert, which is serving all the food, creating some great food,
Okay.
or a guest expert, which is serving the guest and all of that. So we have pre-certifications that are a run up to being fully certified as either a flavor or a guest expert. And that's not something that's required by any means by the Wingstop brand, but it's something that we want to do to make sure that we're really intentional about how we train our team, and that we're really intentional in making sure that we're providing the best training and honestly the best service that we can to our guests too. So, that's something that probably is going to happen a lot within the franchise world is you're going to do training a little bit differently from different standpoints. But I think the nice thing is because we are such a large organization within the brand that we have some of the resources and the ability to do that on a bigger scale at times than others might be able to. So it's really nice to be able to do that. We have the ability to flex and do different things with our leaders and talk with them about doing different leadership studies, examples, things like that, and really making sure that we're diving into leadership the way that we think is going to be the most beneficial for our company as well.
That's so good. Yeah. What a way to innovate within the parameters you've been given, but find new ways to expand that and really challenge. I love those titles. What was it again?
Flavor expert and guest expert.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So what's the goal of a flavor expert?
To serve the world flavor.
There you
So
go.
that's the Wingstop mission. But no,
Okay.
really the goal of a flavor expert is they're really the ones that are working, dropping chicken, dropping all the different product, saucing it, getting it ready for the guest, and making sure that it's top quality food, ready to go on time. And, we just had an opportunity the last 2 weeks to spend some time with all of our general managers and all of our markets. And one of the big things that we talked about is those flavor and guest expert roles. And specifically, we really dove into what does an expert mean to you? And typically, when you ask somebody what an expert means, I used a lot of sports analogies because it's the easiest, especially in different markets. But uh, if there's somebody who's an expert in basketball, so I'm a Spurs fan, so Wemby. So Wemby's an expert in basketball. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But if you took him and put him to go play football or to go play baseball, he's probably not going to do great, even though he's an incredible athlete. And that's because he's an expert at what he does. And so we really tried to dive into, okay, are we making our cashiers guest experts? Are they the best that they can be at serving every single guest that comes in the door? And are we doing what we need to make our cooks, the folks that are working with the food, true flavor experts, where they have that ability to really just make the perfect sandwich, the perfect wing, the perfect tender every single time? And so we really had a fun opportunity to dive into that I was really glad that we were able to do the last couple of weeks.
That's such a challenging layer of leadership, especially in a fast paced, like a QSR environment. And I'll share a scenario that I've noticed. I'll see what kind of let you reflect on that. I've noticed that maybe those GMs, that level, they, a lot of times when you're talking to them, they have this burden. They feel like, or maybe they came from being the expert, being in those roles, and now they're the GM. And so they tend to come into that role feeling like they've got to be the expert on all the different pieces. How do you help them sort through that as far as that burden of feeling like I have to be the expert, but yet we're also making these others experts?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think when you look at a lot of restaurant leaders, we've typically grown up in a restaurant. I started in a Chick-fil-A restaurant at 15. A lot of people share a similar story where they've worked in a restaurant since they were 15, 16 years old, kind of grown up, and we don't always get as much leadership coaching as maybe we would want. And so it's a great opportunity for us to kind of go back now and really dive into what makes a great leader, what makes you be able to have the trust with your team and the trust from your team to lead them every single day. And so I'm going to jump into trust a little bit here because this is a really big thing that I focus on a lot, because I think it's key to being a leader in any restaurant or and really anywhere. And to build trust, this was a little difficult when you're doing it at new restaurant openings. You have very limited amount of time and you've got to get out of there. But it's also really important. Restaurants are very fast paced, very busy. So you don't have a ton of time to get to know the team initially, right? You've got to build it over time. But the two main pieces to building trust for me are being genuine and transparent and then being consistent. So when you're genuine and transparent, that means you're telling them what your goals are, what your potential stumbling blocks are, what your stumbling blocks for the restaurant that you're working in are, or the organization that you're with, and saying, hey, these are our opportunities, and this is how I think you can help us get there. But then being consistent also means making sure that you're following up on those things, making sure that you're doing what you said you were going to do. And one of the pieces that I think gets a little bit lost in translation here is when we're providing coaching. We've had an opportunity to talk with a lot of our leaders recently about how to coach and how to lead and how to give feedback. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle for people who have grown up within the restaurant industry is it's sometimes tough to give coaching and feedback. And I think that's that gap where we can really help as an industry help our younger leaders be able to coach and develop others because it's a very difficult job to do. And as you look at being able to give feedback and being able to give some opportunities for them to grow, you've got to be able to give them some coaching with feedback. Because if you provide coaching and you don't provide feedback, you're essentially providing criticism. That's what it feels like. But if you take coaching and you add feedback, then that's showing them that you care about them. That's showing them that you see them being able to grow and being able to, take that next step, whatever it may be, and that you care about them. And if you can do that as a leader, the rest of it's going to fall into place for you.
Okay, so one part of that is I want to understand a little bit more about, and those so great. I love it. Help me understand what is an example of coaching, or how would you define what's packed into coaching as opposed to feedback?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it is a fine line here because coaching can be any number of different things. And it depends on who you're speaking with. If I'm speaking to a 17-year-old who's working on the line, coaching to them might be, hey, you've never, sauced this particular wing before. This is how you need to do it. You've never built this sandwich, this offering that we have. This is how you're going to do that. That is coaching, right? Because that coaching that they need at that moment is procedural. It's process based on how do I do this task? And that's okay. It's a lot easier to provide feedback there because it's in the moment. It's how to build something, right? How to make something. Now, as you are maybe looking at that same person and they're showing up late and they're been late a few times, then that coaching might look a little bit different. And that might still be, hey, I care about you. You're showing up late the last few times. Help me to understand what's going on. And one of the things that we just did with some of our leaders was a course on being able to have crucial conversations, and it's crucial conversations is the course. And part of that is understanding the why before you really start diving into the coaching. So asking, hey, I see that you've been late the last couple shifts. Help me to understand why, what's going on. Is there something that I can help with? And I think so many times we go to, you were late, stop it. This is what you need to do to fix it, or else something's going to happen. Whereas when I think of coaching, it's okay, let's work through this and understand the root cause first. Like, hey, is there something going on at home? Do I need to adjust because the bus schedule is a little bit different? Or what does that look like for you? And then the feedback that you give at that point is, you had a coaching conversation. You've been able to understand what's going on. Maybe it is the bus schedule has changed or something like that. The feedback that you give at that point is, hey, that's great. I understand it. We're going to adjust your schedule by 15 minutes. So you have plenty of time to get here and you don't have to worry about the bus schedule, and we'll go from there. And then you say, like, hey, let me know if it changes again. Whereas I think if you're providing coaching, and I'm going to say the coaching without feedback coaching, it becomes criticism because it's, hey, you've been late a bunch. If you don't stop being late, if you don't show up on time, you're going to be in trouble. That comes across such a different way than how we just handled it, that if you do that, you're going to break down that trust that you've been building with that team. Whereas if you're providing that coaching, it's a little bit more helpful and it seems like you care about them, because hopefully you do care about them, but you're coming from a place of caring for them and making sure that you're doing everything you can to help them grow. Now, there's a balance between having those caring conversations and then moving to that crucial conversation. And a lot of that depends on how many times have you had that caring conversation and what has their reaction been to it too. Now, that's a very basic example of someone who's, a team member, but I think that's a really easy way to conceptualize kind of what we're talking about.
I love it. I kind of zooming out on that a little bit. I'm thinking about the examples you're giving and how you're defining these terms. And it's, I think the way I'm hearing it is, rather than these, sound bites of do this, or you didn't do this correct, is it sounds like you're trying to contextualize it. You're wanting to go in and understand the context of how did this happen? What, was it all on this one person in their action, or were there other circumstances? And then how can I also help them see the context of, hey, this is how this impacts the business. Let's find a solution together. And it's also, it's kind of a co-authoring in a way of the plan forward. So yeah, I love how you laid that out.
And the great part about that, the way you said that, is that co-authoring with them creates a lot of buy-in on their side. But it also makes
Yeah.
your job a whole lot easier. If people haven't read it out there, there's a book called The Coaching Habit.
Oh
And
yeah.
one of the main tenets of it is the lazy question. And that question is, you're essentially asking them, how do you think that we can improve this situation? Most of the time, people have an idea of what can be done to make the situation better, even if they happen to be part of the issue in the situation. So just like you said, if you have them kind of co-author it and you have that context with it, then you can say, okay, great. Now we understand what's going on. And you just gave us the solution. You made my job a little bit easier. So now let's move forward.
We will also put the Coaching Habit link in the show notes. That's a great book, great 8 questions there that were super powerful. In fact, anything you can see from the author, Michael, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Bungay Stanier, I believe. And he's just an incredible speaker too. So anything you can find of him speaking on YouTube, good stuff. I love the lazy question. So, well, thank you for we've been looking at that decision filter and one we might reach back to one of those here in just a minute, and we dove here into this whole idea of trust and how do you build trust. And I know in your experience with LDP, it was you had to move fast. You had like what 2 or 3 weeks. You may have to be talking to the owner who's actually going to take over this restaurant, and you're trying to get it all set up. So trust had to be built really fast with you and that person, plus you and the other leaders. So trial by fire, learning how to build trust fast. But it sounds like you've really played that forward and used it as a business skill throughout your whole career. So good
Yeah,
job for you.
absolutely. It's definitely been helpful. And if anybody, I'm going to throw another book out there. So I'm sorry, you'll have to add another one. But Leading Without Authority, it's a huge tool in the business world, regardless of what industry you're in, whether or not you're a team member, a manager, or whatever your role may be. Leading Without Authority is such a huge opportunity for us to all grow in, and building trust is a huge part of that as well.
I love it. I'm going to have to read that one. I think I've missed that one. So I have to pull that one off, find that and pull it off the shelf. So good. Leading without authority, because it that's really a challenging kind of leadership, isn't it? I mean, you have to come in more with influence and trust than
Right.
with authority.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that's so good. Troy, this is so good. And I know one of the topics we had really talked about too was about hiring. And you have some really well thought out practices about hiring and how you filter through that, how you top grade people. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy of hiring.
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a huge part of being a leader, is being able to build a team. And sometimes you can't always build those people internally. Sometimes you do got to bring them out from external. But even internally, you have to make some decisions on who you think is going to be the best fit. And so there was a book that I got to read while I was working with Chick-fil A called Who, the A Method for Hiring by Jeff Smart and Randy Street. And it's a great book. The process that they use in that book is called top grading. And really the whole intention of their method is to really understand who the person is. So it's really thorough, and there's a lot of interview steps in there. There's a lot of different ways that you interview them and spend time with that candidate. But it's asking questions about who they are as a person, and it's repetitive questions about who they are, who's impacted them, what would other people say about them, in that, what are your big takeaways from these times in your life, and the big takeaways from your different roles that you've held. So it's very, very thorough way to interview someone, and there's some great guides that can kind of help work
Okay.
through that, so you can make it a little bit smaller, because they are very long. But when I use that, every single person that's ever worked for me and has an opportunity to hire has read that book, and I bought that for them because it's something so important. But then the second step is I tell them, hey, look, tell me once you're done, and we're going to have a conversation. And that conversation that we have is something that, again, is from my time with Chick-fil A, and that's the three C's. And so for those of you guys that have spent time with Chick-fil A, hopefully you know what those are. It's what they look for in their owners and operators, and it's character, chemistry, and competency. And those are three things that are so valuable in being able to hire the right person for your team, as opposed to just somebody for your team. And as you go through the A method for hiring, that book, it really, as you kind of walk through that interview process, it really makes it very clear whether or not they hit those three C's. The character piece is really the piece where we're diving a little bit deeper into the times in their life where you can see who was impactful to them, who kind of helped build them, the way that they answer those highs and lows about those time in their life. You start to see their character a little bit. The competency piece is definitely in who as well. And that's where you start to see, okay, are they able to accomplish the job that you're interviewing them for? That doesn't necessarily mean that they've got the knowledge right now, because some of our roles, we have to provide that training, we have to provide that knowledge to them so that they can step into that role. But you'll be able to see if they've got the ability, or if they've shown the ability in the past to take on the role that you're hiring them for. And then the last piece is sometimes the easiest and sometimes the hardest, and that's the chemistry piece.
Right. It
And that
is.
chemistry
Yeah.
piece, what I've always told the people that have worked for me when we're having this conversation is, how did you feel about them when they were in that interview? Did you feel comfortable talking to them? Is this somebody that you would want to spend some time with, not just at work, but maybe outside of work too? Because that's a great filter on chemistry, right? Is, do I feel comfortable spending time with this person, both at work and not at work? Because, the reality is we spend so much of our times at our workplace that you spend almost the same amount of time as your coworkers with than as you do with your family. So it's really got to be somebody that fits there too. So when we're looking at walking through the structure that Who provides, and do not try to take the entire structure of Who, because it's very, very long, but there's ways to pull some of those questions out. There's some guides that do break it down a little bit more simply, but take this general process of how do you ask questions, kind of how do you dive a little bit deeper into some of these questions, and then look at it through those filters of character, competency, and charisma. And are you able to determine whether or not that this is someone that you feel is a good person, a good fit for you and your company or your business? Is it somebody that you feel has the ability to do the job? And is it somebody that you feel comfortable spending time with too? And that's, no one's going to be 100% at hiring, but from what I've found and what I've seen on my team, that helps tip the scales in your favor.
I agree. I thank you. Yeah, it's really good. I love how you've mashed up the kind of the comprehensiveness of that book, and finding the best out of that, and then using this three-part lens to look at them also, and it kind of helps maybe jump past and jump a little faster through your process. And we use, and this show, I mean, it's called Build Your Culture Brand. What's a culture brand? A culture brand actually helps measure those very three things you're talking about: competency, chemistry, and character. And so, and maybe in a little bit different way or a deeper way, but yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. We'll have to dive into that conversation later. I'll tell you more about that. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and what we found too is that most when you're looking for a leader, you typically, like you said, you don't find 100% in all three, but you do need to find strength, large strength in two, and then a growth opportunity in a third, like a willingness to grow and a hunger to grow in a third. But if they're kind of stuck on that third and they're not going to move, that's where it gets, really challenging, because you're this is who they are. This is as far as they're going to go in that area.
Yeah.
So I
I think
appreciate your look at that.
yeah, and I think the one I'd caution people on as you're thinking about which ones are more, maybe not more important because they're equally important, but which ones maybe you want to be a little bit more thoughtful about is I'm going to throw it back to the serve model real quick. So the last E is embody the values. To me, that's embodying the values of your organization, but then also your personal values as well. So if you feel that somebody isn't quite embodying those values and maybe is not 100% on that character piece, and maybe that's the one that they're the lowest on, that might be a tougher hire and a tougher road to go through than someone who is 100% on character and maybe a little bit lower on the other two as well, because it's so hard to build character in people too, right? That's something that it comes with time, a lot of time. It's definitely doable. There's an opportunity to do that, but it might be a little bit of a longer road for you as well.
That's so good. And one caution there that I've had to struggle through is when I use that word character is we're not talking, obviously we're talking way beyond ethics and morality. That's not what we're talking about in character. We're talking about that kind of coachability or taking ownership, and so are they a moldable character? And so those are the elements we're looking for in character. And then that values piece, I think, is really important too. They can have different values. They're not wrong. They're just not the same. And they're too much different to be in alignment.
Exactly. And I think when we're talking about character, like you said, a lot of that goes back to, is this somebody that do you think you can build trust with? So are
Yeah,
they genuine and transparent? And do you feel like they're consistent in what they're saying? That's more, like you said, that's the character that we're looking for.
I love it. Troy, this has been amazing. Thank you for sharing with us your leadership journey. We look forward to the days ahead for you and exciting things for the organization you're with and all the innovations you're doing there. One, going back to the beginning, I remember now we missed kind of diving into one question kind of as a wrap up. You were talking about the business leader mindset, and so um, we have a lot of top leaders, owners, founders, CEOs that watch this show primarily, and they want their team to have that business leader mindset. What are some ways to help people get there? You talk about seeing the shape of the future. Part of that is that S of see the future, vision casting. What are some other ways to help people grow in their business mindset?
Yeah. So, and I think as an owner in particular, you have such an opportunity to help people grow here as this business leader mindset. I'm going to give Gerald a huge shout out for this one because this is one that I've used for years. But I think it was maybe my first week as the director of operations for South College Station. And he came into the restaurant just to come and visit and came in, said hi to everybody, normal. And we started talking. He said, "Hey, how do you think the restaurant's doing?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's doing great." He said, "Okay, cool. Let me do something with you." And so he grabbed me and he said, "We're going to go walk out to the condiment station and we're going to stand at the condiment station and we're just going to watch." And he said, "I don't want you to do anything, but how often have you taken this time to step back and look at it through the guest perspective?" And then he said, "Okay, now we're going to walk the rest of the restaurant and you need to think about this as you were walking in as a guest." And so when I think of specifically a restaurant, as a business leader, the number one focus that we've got is our guests, right? Obviously, we do things to make sure that they're taken care of. If you take care of their people, they will take care of you. But as a business leader, you are focused on what does that guest experience look like, and then also profitability and some of those as well. But being able to take that step back, that was something I think at maybe 20, 21 years old, nobody had ever done with me before. And for Gerald to take that time with me and step back was just incredible. And something I've tried to do a lot with restaurant leaders as well, as you get so sucked into operations, into how everything is going, who called in, who's not here, food cost, labor cost, all these things. sometimes you do need to take that step back and look at it. And I think that's one of the things in a owner's and a business leader's toolbox, is the ability to be locked into metrics, be locked into numbers and results, and then also take that step back. And so specifically for those of you with young leaders, take that opportunity to spend time with them and really show them how you think about things. And I think that's the best way to help build that business leader mindset, as well as, offering them opportunities to do things from leadership training, leadership coaching, obviously things like that. But that time that you spend with them as the owner, as the business leader that's there currently, that's what's going to be the most promising to help them grow.
Troy, that's so good. What a great gold nugget there to drop at the end, a view of how, to zoom out on the business and help our leaders do that and building that business leader mindset. So thanks for your time, investment here, being on the show, sharing your story, sharing these insights. And we'll look forward to many days ahead for you and so much success in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Been a pleasure being on, and look forward to staying connected in the future.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and share. See you next time.